Hello, this is Earl Nightingale. Some time ago I did a radio broadcast called The Greatest Things, designed to help us remember what in life is important and what isn't. It was an attempt to put the ideas of a number of philosophers into a very simple form: the greatest puzzle, life; the greatest mistake, giving up; the greatest comfort, work well done, and so forth. As a radio program, it was a success. Thousands of people wrote in for printed copies of the script. But afterward, as I often do, I wished I'd mentioned one more thing. In this case, the greatest journey. I would have said I decided that the greatest journey is the journey of the mind, since this is what determines the journey of life. Have you ever had the feeling that your mind is on a journey, a voyage of discovery? That sometimes it has to make long passages on dark, uncharted seas, and at other times it discovers bright islands of beauty or of truth, islands it will know from this day forward that it can always steer for and find in a storm, while the gales of life blow themselves out and the enormous seas of misfortune or pain or sorrow or doubt subside into calm. Well, if you will come, I'd like to take you with me on such a voyage of the mind, one that was charted for me many years ago by an obscure English editor and poet named James Allen in a little book called As a Man Thinketh. Now, James Allen, although he published 17 books, one of which has appeared in at least 10 editions and sold over 1 million copies, is not a famous man. Why? Well, your guess is as good as mine. It may be because James Allen was a so-called Victorian Englishman, lumped in with a group who, because of the writings of certain historians, are more or less generally regarded as complacent, self-satisfied products of a comfortable age which produced fat bellies with heads to match. I've never felt that way about the late Victorians. There's too much evidence that they were anything but complacent. I think they considered themselves running scared, just as we often do. They didn't have an H-bomb, but they did have a population explosion and a rush to the cities. Their population increased more than a third in the last generation of the 19th century, and their cities almost doubled. So great was the tension, nervousness, and social upheaval engendered by the rapidly changing times that the government created a special commission on lunacy, and there was a rash of quasi-religious movements, the kind that almost always flow into the vacuums of social dilemma. No, the language of the Victorians, like Tennyson and Kipling, may have been somewhat flowery by our standards, but their life and times were no bed of roses. Another reason why James Allen is not in Webster's biographic may be his warranted or unwarranted inclusion in another group variously tagged as exponents of 19th century individualism and so-called mind cure. This group ran the gamut from Horatio Alger to Ralph Waldo Trine. James Allen was a reporter. Journalist was the more appropriate term in his day, and I think he was infused with a sort of world consciousness. And I suspect that, like Kipling, he took an interest in the religious writings of other races and cultures, the Hindu Upanishads, and probably the Confucian, Buddhist, and Mohammedan books, too. But I'm not sure, and perhaps we'll never know. I've written to his publishers and to the village of Ilfracombe on the Devon coast where he lived in an effort to learn more about him, but the sum of my factual knowledge at this point is rather small. He was born in 1864 and died in 1912, a true late Victorian. He was a reporter and, in later life, the editor of a magazine called The Epoch. Mainly, he was an essayist, a sort of how-to book writer and a poet, and sometimes, as an essayist, he strikes me as very fine indeed. I should qualify that opinion by disclaiming any pretensions to literary criticism. My literary tastes are often decidedly unliterary. Unlike the critics, I'm most often happily oblivious to flaws in style and language, if the author's ideas hit me where I live. I consider James Allen's most popular book, As a Man Thinketh, a fine piece of writing, a beautiful essay on an important theme. More significant, I believe it represents one of the most effective kinds of verbal communication. It speaks, often very poetically, to some mystic quality in each of us, a quality that seems to discern truth. Listen to these little poems, which are the beginning and end pieces of As a Man Thinketh. Mind is the master power that molds and makes, and man is mind, and evermore he takes the tool of thought, and shaping what he wills, brings forth 1,000